She called at 6:47 in the morning. I know the exact time because I was already awake, sitting at my kitchen table with my second cup of coffee, watching the frost on the back fence catch the early light. My phone was face up on the table. When I saw my son's name, I felt that particular stillness you feel before something breaks. He didn't say hello. Mom. His voice was wrong. Flat in a way I hadn't heard since his father's funeral 12 years ago. She changed the locks. I'm standing outside. I have Noah with me and I don't know what to do. I set down my cup. Stay where you are, I said. Do not leave that front step. I'm coming. I was in the car in 4 minutes. I should give you some context, because none of this started that morning. My son. I'll call him my son. That's how I've always introduced him, the way mothers do. My son. He's 31 years old. He met his wife when they were both working at a logistics company in Mississauga. She was sharp, organized, the kind of woman who color codes her calendar and means it. I liked her for a long time. I want to be honest about that. She wasn't a villain from the start. She was a person who made a terrible decision when things got hard. They'd been married 4 years. They bought a townhouse in Hamilton together 2 years after the wedding. Split the down payment. My son put in 60,000. She put in 40. I know this because I helped him understand the paperwork at the time. I'm a retired paralegal. 31 years in family law and real estate. I didn't practice, but I knew enough. I always knew enough. The marriage started to come apart last spring. I won't pretend I didn't see it. My son is the kind of man who goes quiet when he's struggling, always has been, even as a boy. He'd come for Sunday dinners and eat without tasting anything. He'd look out my kitchen window and I'd know, but he didn't tell me the specifics until August when he finally said they were separating. They had a 2-year-old. My grandson Noah, dark eyes, walks like he's always in a hurry, laughs at things that aren't funny yet. The kind of child who makes you forget what you were worried about. The plan, as my son explained it to me, was that they would both remain living in the townhouse temporarily while they figured out the legal details. Sell eventually, split the equity according to contribution. They were being civil about it, careful. He told me she had spoken to a lawyer already, that things were moving slowly but reasonably. I believed him. I had no reason not to. That lasted 3 months. When I pulled up to the townhouse that morning, he was sitting on the front step with Noah in his lap and 2 grocery bags beside him. Not suitcases, grocery bags. The blue reusable kind from the Loblaws on Barton Street. That's what she gave him. Reusable grocery bags. He'd been at his colleague's birthday gathering the night before. Nothing unusual, home by 10, he told me later. He woke up at 6 to Noah crying in the next room, went to make coffee, found his key didn't work, tried again, knocked. She opened the door, handed him the 2 bags, and told him his things were inside them. She said he needed to leave before she called the police. Noah had been at his grandmother's, her mother's, the night before. She dropped him at my son's feet as she pushed the bags out the door. Whether she planned it or it was a coincidence, I don't know. I've thought about it since. I still don't know. I walked up the path, and I looked at my son's face. He looked like he was waiting for me to tell him what was real. Get in the car, I said. He looked at the bags. I'll get those, I said. You take Noah. I picked up both bags. One of them had a zipper that didn't close properly. I could see his shaving kit through the gap and a folded photograph. Him and Noah at Confederation Park last summer. She'd packed that photograph. I don't know what to make of that either. I put the bags in the trunk. I buckled Noah into the car seat I keep in my back seat for exactly this kind of grandmother reason. My son sat in the passenger seat and stared at the townhouse. She can't do that, he said. Can she? I pulled out of the driveway before I answered him. No, I said. She cannot. We drove to my house in Ancaster. I put Noah down for a nap in my spare room with the white noise machine I bought 2 Christmases ago. He went down easily, which was a mercy. He's always been a good sleeper. I made toast because my son hadn't eaten. And I've learned over the years that people in crisis need something to do with their hands and their mouths. I put jam on the table, even though I knew he probably wouldn't touch it. "Tell me everything," I said, "from the beginning." He did. Slowly, then faster. The way it comes out when you've been holding it. What I learned, the townhouse was in both names. Joint ownership. He had never signed anything removing himself from the title. There was no separation agreement in place. There was no court order. There was nothing, no legal document of any kind that gave her the right to change the locks on a jointly owned property. What she had done was not a grey area. It was not a complicated legal question. It was unlawful. I want to say this clearly, because my son didn't fully understand it that morning, and because I think a lot of people don't. In Ontario, if your name is on the title of a property, you have the right to be there. It doesn't matter if your relationship is over. It doesn't matter if your ex wants you gone. They cannot change the locks and remove you from a home you legally own without a court order. That's not a technicality, that's the law. The Residential Tenancies Act doesn't even fully apply here because this wasn't a landlord-tenant situation. This was a co-owner being physically excluded from their own asset. She'd done something that could have real legal consequences for her. I didn't say all of this to my son right away. I said, "Do you have the paperwork from when you bought the house?" He said yes. It was in a filing box in his closet. "Is the closet in the house?" "Yes." "Okay," I said. "Eat your toast." He ate half a piece. I counted that as a win. I have a friend. She's been practicing real estate law in Hamilton for 22 years. We met through work back in the 90s, and we've had lunch together every few months ever since. She's one of those people who makes you feel like the world is navigable, like there's always a door, you just have to know where to look. I called her at 9:30. I explained the situation. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Right, that's a wrongful exclusion situation. She's exposed." We talked for 40 minutes. When I hung up, I had a clear picture of what needed to happen. First, document everything. My son needed to write down the timeline, when he left, when he returned, what was said, what the bags contained, the exact words she used, timestamps if he had them. I told him to send himself an email with all of it immediately, so there was a dated record. Second, we needed to formally notify her that she had unlawfully excluded a co-owner from the property and that she was required to restore his access within 24 hours, or we would be pursuing legal remedies. Third, if she did not comply, we would be applying for an urgent motion with the court to restore access. My friend had already told me she could make a call to expedite this if it came to that. My son sat across from me at the kitchen table and watched me write notes on a legal pad. I still use legal pads, I can't stop, and after a while he said quietly, "I didn't know any of this." "Most people don't," I said. That's what she was counting on. He went very still. I think that was the moment it landed for him. That this hadn't been impulsive on her part. That she had calculated that he wouldn't know his rights. That he would just leave, because he didn't know he was allowed to stay. I drafted the letter myself that afternoon, using language my friend reviewed over email. It was formal, precise, and, I'll be honest, it was written to be frightening, because sometimes frightening is the appropriate tone. It outlined the legal reality, joint ownership, no court order, no separation agreement authorizing exclusive possession, and her act of changing the locks constituting unlawful exclusion. It specified the 24-hour window. It noted that documentation had been prepared and that we were prepared to proceed through the courts if necessary. It included a reference to potential consequences, which in Ontario can be significant if a court finds you've acted unreasonably. My son read it. He looked at me over the top of the page. "You wrote this," he said. "I had help. Mom." He set the paper down. She's going to freak out. Yes, I said. She is. Is that okay? I thought about it for a moment. Not because I was uncertain, but because I wanted to give him an honest answer. Someone behaved unlawfully, I said. Consequences for unlawful behavior are appropriate. If she's frightened, it's because she understands now that what she did was wrong, and that you're not alone, and that you know your rights. That's exactly what she should understand. He nodded slowly. We sent the letter by email to the address she used for all their joint financial correspondence. We also sent a copy by registered mail to the property. My friend had advised both. Her response came at 11:14 that night. I was already in bed, but I had my phone beside me because I told my son to forward anything he received immediately. The screen lit up, and I read it lying in the dark. She had spoken to her own lawyer. Her lawyer had told her, and I give him credit for this, that the letter was correct, that she had in fact unlawfully excluded a co-owner, that she needed to remedy this. She didn't apologize. The email was cold and managed, written in that legal adjacent language people use when they're embarrassed and angry at the same time. But the substance of it was, she would have a locksmith come the following morning to provide my son with a working key. He could return to the property. She was prepared to discuss interim arrangements. I read it twice. Then I texted my son, "She's complying. You have your key by morning. Get some sleep." He replied almost immediately, "I don't know what I would have done." I turned my phone face down and lay there in the dark for a while. Outside, the wind was moving through the trees in my backyard. We'd had a wet autumn, the leaves were all still on, and I listened to it. I thought about my son sitting on that front step with 2 grocery bags and a 2-year-old waiting. I thought about how close he came to just walking away, getting in his car, calling a friend, sleeping on a couch somewhere, because he thought he had no options. The things we don't know, that's what gets people, not malice, half the time, just the things we don't know. The locksmith came the next morning at 9. My son was there. He got his key. He walked back into his own house. He called me from the front hallway. "I'm in," he said. "Good," I said. He was quiet for a second. I could hear Noah in the background, making the particular sound he makes when he's found something interesting on the floor. "She's upstairs," my son said. "It's very quiet." "That's fine," I said. "You don't have to speak to each other. You just have to be legally present." "Okay, and now," I said, "you call the family lawyer I told you to call last week, and you make that appointment." "I know." "Today," I said. "Today," he agreed. The separation process took another 7 months. It was not simple, and it was not without pain. I won't romanticize it. There were bad weeks. There were weeks when Noah was caught in the middle of scheduling disputes, and my son would call me sounding exhausted in a way that made me want to get in the car again. But it moved forward. With the right legal support in place, it moved forward. The house sold in the spring. The equity was divided according to their respective contributions, something that was formalized early in the process, before either side could revise the narrative about who put in what. My son got a fair outcome because there was documentation, because he knew his rights, and because he didn't walk away from the step that morning. He's renting a place now in Dundas, 10 minutes from me. 2 bedrooms. Noah has a room with dinosaur decals on the wall that my son put up on a Saturday afternoon while I sat in the kitchen and made sandwiches and pretended I wasn't tearing up behind his back. Noah is 3 now. He calls my house Grandma's Dinosaur House because I have a small ceramic triceratops on my windowsill that he is obsessed with. He asks about it every time he comes over. He held it very carefully last week and told me it was sleeping. "It's sleeping," I agreed. He nodded, very serious, and put it back. I've had people ask me, since friends, a woman in my book club who heard the short version, whether I was angry, whether I am angry even now. I've thought about how to answer that honestly. I was not angry that morning. I was focused. Anger is a feeling I've learned to set aside until there's space for it, because in the middle of a crisis, it doesn't help anyone. Panic is a luxury, and so, sometimes, is anger. You feel it after. I felt it after. Yes, I felt it when I understood that she had calculated her move based on the assumption that my son was isolated and uninformed. I felt it when I thought about him sitting on that step, holding Noah, not knowing that he was legally allowed to walk through that door. But anger doesn't sustain very well once the outcome is resolved. What I'm left with, mostly, is something quieter, something like a reminder. Your rights don't protect you if you don't know you have them. The paperwork matters, the documentation matters. The phone calls you make in the first few hours matter more than almost anything else. If there's something in your situation, property rights, what to do in the first 24 hours, who to call, ask me in the comments. I read all of them. You don't have to figure it out alone.